Welcome back to our series on the idea of the self-care mirage, the mirage concept in self-care. I think we're going to tackle today the understanding of how does a mirage appear. This means essentially that in order to have a mirage happen, we have to effectively deny a style of reality. Meaning that I just have to choose not to pay attention to something, and in not paying attention to that, when I'm confronted with it naturally by life, this then has the idea of popping out of nowhere and having a big impact, and me not quite being able to see what it is or where it's coming from. This ultimately also lends to the understanding that our personalities were created in the way of traversing life. All the challenges of life made us lean heavily on our strengths, and in leaning too heavily on our strengths, we give our weakness greater power. So in the sense that I want to take everything on as a strong, independent individual, and as I live a life that way, my biggest weakness comes to its kind of zenith when I have to confront the fact that I can't take everything on by myself, and I do have to rely on help. And at that point, it is going to be the most devastating to ask for help. But this is a process of kind of life showing itself. And in that exact same way, when I struggle with asking for help because I'm a strong, independent person, and I finally do it, and I realize that that relieves a whole bunch of burden off my shoulders. And while there are people that also want to support me going through life's challenges, then this allows me to use new skills, the ones that were never developed because I never looked at life or was confronted with life in this way. And because we've been using the wrong tool, we're using dedication, strength, and determination as opposed to calm, relaxation, and reflection to move through life, then we have a whole kind of relaxing of things. And we put the amount of achievement that we can possibly do in a day in its right perspective. Now, I often say that we are physically capable of doing far more than is healthy, meaning that there's a point where what we do is sustainable by our bodies, minds, and emotions, and then we do this much more, which is not sustainable. And this causes health problems. Health problems essentially is the body trying to speak to us in a way of slow down, figure this out, let's think about this. But again, this is all built in the idea that what we're doing is the best thing we possibly can do. And in that way, there's no correction to it. If we're already doing our best, then we can't get better. Therefore, there's no solution. So when we're confronted with this challenge, it becomes very hard to figure out what direction are we going to go here. Who's here to help us? Is there nobody? If there's nobody, we're stuck. And if we're stuck, we either kind of freeze in the sense that we continue to do the exact same thing over and over again every week, and it gets monotonous and it gets boring. Then as things get boring, we have to find ways to spice it up. We spice it up, that gets boring, and we continually kind of create stimulus externally for what we should have internally, and which would be a lot less, let's say, visually seen, in the sense that when you have the true capacity within yourself, the external expression is way more quiet. In the sense, if we're going to put this in a dynamic of like an office, the person in the meeting that generally has the most power in the room is going to speak the least, as opposed to the person in the room that always wants to speak is essentially indicating that they feel like they do not have power by trying to constantly insert themselves into an argument or show their validity by contributing a whole bunch of things. And in this way, the true version is more quiet. Now, if we're going to kind of learn from this exchange with the Mirage, is that we need to slow down a lot. And when you slow down a lot, you will start to feel like you're doing nothing. This is perfect. This actually means that you're going in the right direction. If you feel bored, if you feel like there's 1,000 things that you could possibly be doing with this time, you are doing great. And once we get past that point, we'll start to realize that we don't have to do everything. Things will kind of take care of themselves for the most part without us interfering. And in that way, then we can reserve our energy for the time where we are needed, and we use that energy wisely. And after this point, when we start using our energy more wisely, we might start to see that there is something that really calls to us, this thing that elicits kind of excitement, further research, further growth of personality, this thing that allows you to take on life's challenge in a more bold way because you can see that what you're going to achieve is way more worth it. This is more akin to your purpose in life, if you want to call it something, your great work of art that will take time to unfold and build towards. Often, I think, great misperception, if I'm going to give you kind of a helpful tip, is that our greatest strengths is the way that we're going to create our art or our purpose. This is generally incorrect in the sense that you started out with that skill. It's not much of a journey if you already have the skill and utilize it to its full potential at the beginning. Therefore, mastery of this skill is what we're seeking. Not the initial expression of it, but the ability to use it in all aspects in its right light. In this way, you will have to integrate your personal weaknesses so that you can become fully yourself, and then embodying yourself more correctly, be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve from a standpoint of costing, let's say, less energy mentally, physically, and emotionally. This means that it's sustainable. There will be no health issue with you doing this thing because you're doing it at the appropriate rate, with the appropriate mindset, with the appropriate physical need for that challenge. And being able to see how those things play off together, and always then switching to the right balance at the right time so that we can achieve these things. Hopefully that was a little bit more insightful. Again, this is kind of a quick one-over of the idea of the Mirage, but giving you different aspects so you can really come to the conclusion yourself of what it is by hearing all these different elements that play into what it truly is about.